All right. Well, hello. I'm Joanna with Blissful Baby Sleep Coaching. And today I thought we'd go back to some basics, which is why is sleep so important? Um, Last night I had the great pleasure of watching a Zoom presentation with my favorite sleep doctor, Dr. Matthew Walker. He wrote this marvelous book called Why We Sleep: Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams. And it is absolutely fascinating. And I had the great pleasure that he was doing a presentation last night to parents around the Bay Area regarding sleep and obviously focusing in on children's sleep, which is my great passion. But he, took us all back into some basics about why sleep is so foundational before he got into talking about the different age groups. And so I just thought I wanted to share some of this powerful information that he shared with all of us last night to just really put fine points on why sleep is truly your number one superpower and why it is so important to take sleep seriously, not only for yourself as a parent, but also for your child. So let me just tell you a couple of important facts that he shared with me. Um, there is absolutely a sleep epidemic going on. He literally used the word sleep epidemic, which is that we are sleeping far less than we've ever had in our society. And this is a real tragedy because when we sleep, it is a very active and vital state where important things are happening in our bodies to provide optimum wellness. And one of the situations, as we all know, is that sleep is considered kind of unproductive time. Our society is so geared towards productivity, output, tangible output is what we consider important, and that these softer considerations such as optimal sleep doesn't really hit that viewpoint as being productive. But in fact, it is literally one of the most productive things we can be doing to optimize our well-being and our long-term health. So, first of all, let me explain that in REM sleep, which is when we are in our dream state, which typically happens at the back end of your night. So, at the front end of your night, you tend to be more in light sleep, and towards the early morning hours, you tend to be more in REM sleep. And REM sleep is where a lot of magic happens. He literally called REM sleep a time of emotional first aid and overnight therapy. And I thought that was quite brilliant to think of it that way. Right now with COVID, we are in a mental health crisis um, because people are not used to being so isolated. And it's really hard. Humans are built for connection, as Brene Brown would say. And so if you think about REM sleep, this important dream state is really where your emotional first aid and your overnight therapy is happening. And really what sleep does is not only does it nourish our mental health, but it nourishes our physical health. That is a time when we are processing our emotions. It is a time when we are consolidating our learning that we did that day. We are also consolidating memory during sleep. We're boosting our immune system. We're fighting dementia, and we're regulating our metabolism. So that, if you looked at that list on a piece of paper, like I'm looking at it right now, that is a highly productive period, which is why it's such an important vital state that we allow ourselves in. And, what's happening now is that because we're in this sleep epidemic, we don't prioritize sleep. We don't recognize it as a superpower. And so we skimp. We skimp because we have work deadlines. We skimp because we'd rather stay up and watch TV or do other tasks. or we skimp because our babies aren't sleeping and our children aren't sleeping. So because I'm a baby sleep coach, I have to tell you that if the only reason why you are not sleeping well is because your child isn't sleeping, there's totally an answer for that. So that's the good news. The good news is that if your sleep issues are because of your children, there's always a solution. If your child is 6 months old, 18 months old, 4-year-old, 6-year-old, 10 years old, 12 years old, there's always a way to learn how to sleep better. So if you're there saying, well, I sleep beautifully, but my child doesn't, well, then it's time to get on the phone with me and let's have a conversation, because we can absolutely help you solve your child's sleep struggles. That's not the problem. But the problem is that when the child isn't sleeping well, that inevitably means that most likely both parents aren't sleeping well. So now we have a situation where you have both parents sleep deprived and exhausted. You have a child that's not sleeping well, so they're sleep deprived and exhausted. And we go back to all the things that are not happening because of lack of sleep. All this, effect on mental health, effect on physical health, effect on not being able to process emotions, not optimizing the learning, the memory, the immune support, all of that. Like all of that's not happening when you are not getting good sleep. And that would mean that your whole family was experiencing this lack. Okay, so that's bad. So I'll get off my soapbox there, but if your child's not sleeping, there's always a solution. Don't hesitate to call. I can totally help you. But on a separate note, I want to also explain what the social costs are to lack of sleep. So we know what's happening to us personally if we have lack of sleep, all those things that I just mentioned. But there's also a social cost of a society that is sleep deprived. And one of the big ones, and I've read this before, but he really emphasized it last night, is that lack of sleep causes lack of empathy. So I want you to think about that for a second. If you're sleep deprived, you are going to inherently have less empathy, which means you might have less empathy for your spouse, for your child, for your friends, for your family, for your coworkers, right? Less empathy. So now think of the flip side. Let's say you're the one that's well rested, but your doctor is sleep deprived. Your doctor might have less empathy when they're working with you. The storekeeper that you go to that normally is really nice, but now is all grumpy all the time, less empathy because of lack of sleep. So it is a societal cost if we're all sleep deprived, because there's this high potential we're going to be less empathetic towards each other and our societal functioning. That's sad. And because I know when I go to my doctor and I'm not feeling well, or there's something scary going on with me, I want my doctor to be very empathetic. I want my husband to be empathetic. And I, as a mother, want to be empathetic to my child right now, especially with all the changes these children are going through, not being like, I'm here in California, they just closed the playgrounds again. So these poor kids only had the playgrounds open for maybe 2 months out of this whole time frame, and now they're closed again. And it's just, talk about needing empathy. The other thing that happens that's a social cost to kind of a sleep deprived nation is it creates more social distancing, not in the good way that we want right now to keep ourselves safe from COVID, but literally like people that are sleep deprived don't want to deal with other people. And they have literally done studies to show that sleep deprived individuals emit a signal of kind of like a back off signal. Like, I can't handle you, so just stay away. I don't have enough capacity right now. And so if we're walking around as a sleep deprived society and all of us are already less empathetic, and now we're emitting kind of a vibe that kind of is like, stay, I can't handle you right now. How are we going to build deep, meaningful connections? That's really sad. And that was striking to me, that we literally emit a signal. The other social implications is traffic accidents. Lots and lots of traffic accidents are caused because of sleeplessness. And it can be as bad as driving drunk. So lack of sleep when people are have an accident because of sleepiness, it's as bad as, driving under the influence of alcohol. So that's pretty scary if you think about that. Obviously, other ones like poor performance in the workplace, just being able not to concentrate, follow through, etc. And then a big one is that they're finding right now with COVID that 1 out of 3 people are suffering from insomnia, which is just, oh my gosh, I couldn't even believe that. It's an astounding statistic. And they're literally calling it somnia. They literally are calling it a subset, like they're calling it a new name, coronasomnia. And 1 out of 3 people are suffering from this. And if any of you out there have suffered from insomnia, that you know how painful it is to experience that and how long it takes to actually unwind that sleep behavior. So the most important, here are the 5 tips that Matthew Walker shared with all of us last night. We know these things, you guys, we know these things, but we aren't doing them. And we need to, because sleep is your superpower. And there are big social implications, social and physical, personal implications if we're not. So his 5 sleep tips are regularity, going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, 7 days a week. There's never really an opportunity to catch up on sleep. So if you have that perception, it's not true. Use darkness to your advantage. Before, not only, turn off your digital devices at least an hour before you want to be asleep, but he's also recommending to go a step further and start dimming the lights around your house and at least a half an hour before you want to go to bed. Number 3, if you are starting to experience some insomnia, either because at the onset of sleep you can't go to sleep, or you wake up in the middle of the night and then it's hard to go back to sleep, he recommends not staying in bed any longer than 25 minutes if you're struggling. And then if you are struggling, to get up and go do something relaxing. So stay in a dimly lit room, but you can read, you can do some stretching, you can do some meditation. Don't watch TV. And then when you feel drowsy again, then go back to your sleeping space and try again. Also, he's just really recommending that, to be very mindful of alcohol and caffeine. So with alcohol, it actually blocks the dream REM state. And so that would be a shame, right? That if you used alcohol to get drowsy at night, then ultimately you're going to wake up that next morning not feeling that great. And at the same time, it will have blocked some of your precious dream and REM sleep, which is where a lot of the superpower energy is coming from in your sleep cycles. And then caffeine. With the caffeine, his concern is that caffeine just has a really long half-life. And so, for example, if you have caffeine at 12 noon, most likely it's still in your system at 12 midnight. And again, because he's looking to recommend regular sleep schedules, that can be problematic. And so if you want to be in bed by 10 o'clock, try to cut your caffeine by 10 a.m. that morning. And that's usually a good way to help yourself. He also wanted you to know that past 3 cups of coffee per day really is, you kind of lose the benefits of what caffeine can do for you, right? Because caffeine is actually an antioxidant and it can actually have a lot of health benefits. But past the 3 cups a day, you kind of lose all that extra added benefits of the antioxidants, and all you're left with is the problems with caffeine, which is that it's a stimulant and it makes it harder for you to go to sleep at the time frame that you need to. So I'm hoping that all this was helpful information to you. I know I was just thoroughly entertained and engaged the whole time and rapidly taking notes. And I wish it had been a live Zoom call so I could have asked some questions, but I didn't have that opportunity. But I highly recommend this book. If any of this has fascinated you and you want to learn more about your sleep life, this is the book that I recommend. Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. I'll put it also in the chat. But I thank you very much. And if there's anyone here that has a question that you want to ask me real quick, I'm more than happy to stay on for a minute or so and answer that. And those of you that are watching this on a replay, any questions you have, you can always do #replay, and I will be able to go back into the comments and answer your question. Also, those of you that are like, wow, you know what, I am sleep deprived because my child's not sleeping, and I don't want to be diminishing my superpower. Don't hesitate to reach out to Blissful Baby Sleep Coaching, and you can go to the Contact Me page and you can fill out the form to speak to me, and we will absolutely talk about your unique situation. I'm a gentle sleep coach, so you don't have to worry about cry it out. But my goal is really to be on this mission to help families be well rested. So I will put all these things in the comments. But thank you so much for being here. And I will see you next week, 3 p.m. Bye.